The big clock in the hallway went tick-tock, tick-tock. That was the only sound in the enormous mansion on Maple Street. Well, that and the soft footsteps of Mrs. Eleanor Hart as she walked to her dining room. Every single evening, it was the same thing. Mrs. Hart would sit at the head of a very long table. The table could fit 20 people, maybe more, but there was only one plate, only one glass, only one fork and one knife. The rest of the table was empty and shiny, reflecting the sad face of the old woman who sat there alone. "Your dinner, ma'am," said Roberts, the butler. He was a thin man with gray hair, who had worked for Mrs. Hart for 30 years. He placed a silver plate in front of her. Steam rose from the roasted chicken and vegetables. "Thank you, Roberts," Mrs. Hart said quietly. Her voice sounded like dry leaves blowing across a sidewalk. Roberts bowed and left the room. His footsteps faded away. Then it was just Mrs. Hart, her dinner, and the silence. She picked up her fork. She looked at the empty chairs around her. 20 empty chairs. All of them had been filled once. A long time ago. There had been parties and laughter and music. But that was before everything changed. Now, Mrs. Hart was 72 years old. She had more money than she could ever spend. She had a mansion with 15 bedrooms. She had gardens full of roses. She had paintings worth millions of dollars on her walls. But she had no husband. He died 10 years ago. She had no children. Well, she tried not to think about that. And she had no friends who visited anymore. She ate her dinner slowly, chewing each bite exactly 20 times. That's what the doctor said was healthy. When she finished, she rang a small bell. Roberts appeared like a ghost. "Will that be all, ma'am?" "Yes, Roberts. Good night." "Good night, ma'am." Mrs. Hart walked up the grand staircase to her bedroom. It was only 7 o'clock. But what else was there to do? She would read a book, take her medicine, and go to sleep. Tomorrow would be exactly the same as today. And the day after that would be the same, too. This was her life now. This was how it had been for 10 long years. But everything was about to change. The next morning, Roberts knocked on Mrs. Hart's bedroom door. "Ma'am, the new helper is here." Mrs. Hart looked up from her breakfast tray. "New helper? What new helper?" "For the gardens, ma'am. You approved the hiring last month. Her name is Maya Johnson." Mrs. Hart frowned. She didn't remember approving anything. But Roberts handled most of the house business now. Her memory wasn't what it used to be. "Fine. I don't need to meet her. Just make sure she knows not to disturb me." "Yes, ma'am." But here's the thing about life. Sometimes it disturbs you whether you want it to or not. That evening, Mrs. Hart walked to the dining room as usual. She sat in her chair as usual. Roberts brought her dinner as usual. But then something very unusual happened. The dining room door opened, not slowly and carefully like when Roberts entered. No, this door burst open with a bang. A small boy ran into the room. He was maybe 7 years old with dark skin and the biggest, brightest eyes Mrs. Hart had ever seen. He wore blue jeans with holes in knees and a red T-shirt that had a dinosaur on it. His sneakers lit up when he ran, flashing red and blue. "Jamal! Jamal!" A woman's voice called from the hallway. "Come back here right now." But the boy didn't listen. He looked around the huge dining room with wonder in his eyes. His mouth fell open. "Hoa!" he whispered. "This place is like a castle." Then he saw Mrs. Hart. Their eyes met across the room. Mrs. Hart sat frozen in her chair, her fork halfway to her mouth. The boy stood frozen in the doorway, his light-up sneakers still blinking. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then the boy smiled. It was a kind of smile that could light up a whole city. "Hi," he said. "I'm Jamal. What's your name?" Before Mrs. Hart could answer, a young woman rushed into the room. She was breathing hard, worry written all over her face. "I am so sorry, Mrs. Hart. I'm Maya, the new gardener. I had to bring my son today because his school is closed and I couldn't find a babysitter, and I promised he would stay outside, but he ran away from me and—" "It's fine," Mrs. Hart said coldly. Her shock had turned into ice. "Just remove him from this room. Now!" Maya's face went pale. "Yes, ma'am." Right away, ma'am. She grabbed Jamal's hand. Come on, baby. We have to go. But, Mom, I just wanted to say hi to the... Now, Jamal. Maya pulled her son toward the door. Jamal looked back at Mrs. Hart one more time. He waved with his free hand. Bye. Nice to meet you. Then they were gone. The door closed. The silence came back. Mrs. Hart sat very still. Her dinner was getting cold, but she didn't notice. Something strange was happening in her chest. It felt tight and achy, like something was squeezing her heart. She hadn't seen a child in her house for 10 years. Not since. No, she said out loud to the empty room. Don't think about it. She picked up her fork again. She took a bite. She chewed exactly 20 times. But the food tasted like cardboard. Outside in the garden, Maya was crying. I'm going to lose this job, Jamal. This was the best paying job I've ever had. Why didn't you listen to me? I'm sorry, Mama, Jamal said quietly. But did you see her? She looked so sad. She was eating all alone in that big room. Nobody should eat alone. Maya wiped her eyes. Baby, rich people are different. They like being alone. They don't want people like us bothering them. But Jamal shook his head. No, Mama, nobody likes being alone. Not really. The next evening, Mrs. Hart sat down for dinner at her usual time. Roberts brought her meal. Everything was normal. But then, at exactly 6:15, something incredible happened. The dining room door opened slowly this time. Jamal walked in, carrying a small plastic plate with his own dinner on it. Macaroni and cheese from a box. He walked right up to the long table, pulled out the chair directly next to Mrs. Hart, and sat down. Then he looked at her with those bright, fearless eyes and said, You shouldn't eat alone. It's not good for you. My mama says eating together makes food taste better. Mrs. Hart's mouth fell open. Robert stood in the doorway, looking shocked. Nobody spoke. And that's when everything began to change. Mrs. Hart stared at the little boy sitting next to her. Her face turned red, then white, then red again. Young man, she said in her coldest voice, you cannot sit here. This is MY dining room. Leave. Now. Jamal didn't move. He just picked up his plastic fork and took a bite of his macaroni and cheese. This is really good, he said. Want some? I most certainly do not want some. Mrs. Hart's voice was sharp as broken glass. Roberts, where's this child's mother? Roberts rushed out. A minute later, Maya came running in. Her eyes were wide with fear. Jamal, what did I tell you? I am so sorry, Mrs. Hart. Please don't fire me. Please. I need this job. We need this job. Mrs. Hart pointed at Jamal. Get him out. Maya grabbed Jamal's arm. Come on, baby. Right now. But why? Jamal asked, looking confused. There's like 100 empty chairs. Why can't I use one? Because rich people don't eat with poor people, Maya whispered, pulling him toward the door. That's not fair. Jamal said loudly, everybody should eat together. My teacher says sharing is caring. Mrs. Hart banged her hand on the table. Her water glass jumped. Out! This time, Maya practically carried Jamal out of the room. The door slammed shut. Silence came back. But it felt different now. Heavier. Sadder. Mrs. Hart looked at her fancy dinner. She looked at the empty chair where Jamal had been sitting. There was a small smudge of cheese sauce on the table where his plate had been. She rang her bell. Roberts, clean this mess. Yes, ma'am. But that night, Mrs. Hart couldn't sleep. She kept seeing Jamal's confused face. Why can't I use one? He had asked. It was a good question. Why couldn't he? There were 19 empty chairs. What difference did it make if one small boy used one of them? Because that's how things are, she said to her dark bedroom. But even her own ears, it sounded like a weak excuse. The next evening, Mrs. Hart sat down for dinner. She told herself she was relieved. That troublesome child would stay away now. Everything would go back to normal. But at 6:15, the door opened again. Jamal walked in with his plastic plate. This time he had chicken nuggets shaped like dinosaurs. He sat in the same chair as before and smiled at Mrs. Hart. "Hi, I'm back." Mrs. Hart's fork clattered onto her plate. "Are you deaf? I told you to stay out." "I know," Jamal said cheerfully, "but I didn't listen. My mama says I'm stubborn like a mule." "What's a mule?" "It's a—" "Why am I answering you?" "Get out." "Nope." Jamal bit into a dinosaur nugget. "You need a friend, and I'm really good at being a friend. Ask anybody at my school." Mrs. Hart stood up so fast her chair fell backward. "Roberts." But Jamal kept talking, his voice suddenly quiet and serious. "My mama cries at night sometimes. I hear her. She cries because she's lonely. She cries because my daddy left us. She cries because life is hard. But you know what? When I sit with her and hold her hand, she stops crying. Maybe if someone sits with you, you'll stop being so sad too." Mrs. Hart froze. Her anger melted like ice cream in the sun. She stared at the strange, bold little boy who somehow saw right through her. "I'm not sad," she whispered, but her voice cracked. "Yes, you are," Jamal said gently. "Your eyes are sad. They look like my mama's eyes." Maya burst through the door, breathless. "Jamal, no, not again." She turned to Mrs. Hart. "Please, I'll make sure he never comes in here again. I'll lock him in the car if I have to. Just please don't fire me." Mrs. Hart opened her mouth to say, "You're fired." Those were the words she wanted to say, the words she should say. But different words came out instead. "Let him stay." Everyone froze. Roberts dropped the towel he was holding. Maya's eyes went huge. Even Jamal looked surprised. "What?" Maya whispered. Mrs. Hart slowly picked up her fallen chair and sat back down. "I said let him stay. For dinner. Just this once." She didn't look at anyone. She just picked up her fork with a shaking hand. Jamal's face exploded into the biggest smile. "Really? Really? Don't make me change my mind," Mrs. Hart said, but her voice was softer now. Maya stood in the doorway, not knowing what to do. Roberts shrugged at her. Finally, Maya nodded and backed out of the room. For 5 whole minutes, they ate in silence. Jamal with his dinosaur nuggets, Mrs. Hart with her fancy chicken. Then Jamal said, "My name is Jamal. What's your name?" "Mrs. Hart." "That's not a first name. It's the only name you need to know." "Okay, Mrs. Hart." Jamal swung his legs under the table. His feet didn't touch the floor. "Do you have any kids?" The fork fell from Mrs. Hart's hand. It hit the plate with a terrible clang that echoed in the big room. "That," she said in a voice like winter wind, "is none of your business." "Oh, okay. Sorry." Jamal ate another nugget. "I don't have a daddy anymore. He left when I was 4. Do you have a husband?" "He died." "Oh, that's sad. I'm sorry." They ate in silence again. Then Jamal said, "This house is really, really big. Do you get lost sometimes?" Despite herself, Mrs. Hart almost smiled. "Almost? No, I would get lost. I'd need a map, and maybe a dog to help me find my way." "Do you have a dog?" "No." "Why not? Dogs are the best. My friend Tyler has a dog named Biscuit, and he can do tricks and—" "I don't like dogs." "Oh." Jamal thought about this. "Do you like cats?" "No." "Birds?" "No." "Fish?" "No." "What do you like?" Mrs. Hart put down her fork. She looked at Jamal with tired eyes. "I used to like many things, but not anymore." "Why not?" "Because when you lose everything that matters, nothing else seems important." Jamal tilted his head, thinking hard. "But you didn't lose everything. You still have this big house, and Roberts, and all these chairs, and now you have me." Something twisted in Mrs. Hart's chest. She stood up quickly. "Dinner is over. Go back to your mother." "But I'm not finished." "Now." Jamal grabbed his plate and ran out. Mrs. Hart stood alone in her dining room, breathing hard. Her hands were shaking. Why was she shaking? It was just a child. Just a nosy, annoying child who asked too many questions. But that night, she couldn't stop thinking about what he said. When you lose everything that matters. She walked to a room she hadn't entered in 10 years. It was a bedroom down the hall. A small bedroom with blue walls. She opened the door slowly. Everything was exactly as it had been. The toy cars on the shelf. The books about space and dinosaurs. The little bed with rocket ship sheets. The baseball glove on the desk. Mrs. Hart walked to the bed and sat down. She picked up a stuffed elephant that sat on the pillow. It was worn and old, loved almost to pieces. "Oh, Matthew," she whispered. "My sweet boy." Tears rolled down her face. She hadn't cried in years. She thought she had no tears left. But here they were, falling like rain. Her son Matthew would have been 17 now, but he never made it past 7. The cancer took him slowly, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but memories and an empty bedroom. After he died, Mrs. Hart closed herself off. She pushed everyone away. She couldn't bear to feel anything, because feeling meant hurting, and she had heard enough for 10 lifetimes. But tonight, after talking to Jamal, something had cracked open inside her. The wall she'd built around her heart had a hole in it now. The next evening, Jamal came back, and the evening after that, and the evening after that. Each time, Mrs. Hart said he couldn't stay, and each time, she let him anyway. Jamal talked about school, his friends, his dreams, his favorite cartoons. Mrs. Hart said very little, but she listened, and slowly, very slowly, she started to ask questions back. How was your spelling test? Did you finish that book about the magic tree house? What did your teacher say about your art project? Maya watched from the doorway sometimes, amazed. Her impossible son had done the impossible. He had made the Ice Queen melt. But then, on Friday evening, something changed. Jamal came in for dinner, as usual, but this time he was crying. "What's wrong?" Mrs. Hart asked. The words came out before she could stop them. "My mama," Jamal sobbed. "She's losing her job. Someone told her boss that she brings me to work. They said it's not professional. She has to find someone to watch me by Monday, or she's fired." Mrs. Hart's face went pale. Who told her boss? I don't know, but Mama is so scared. If she loses this job, we might lose our apartment. We might have to move far away. Jamal looked up at Mrs. Hart with tears streaming down his face. "I don't want to move. I like it here. I like eating dinner with you." Something broke inside Mrs. Hart. Completely, totally broke. She stood up and rang her bell hard. Roberts appeared instantly. "Get Maya. Now!" Maya came running into the dining room, her face full of worry. "Yes, Mrs. Hart? Is something wrong?" Mrs. Hart stood tall and straight. Her voice was strong, not cold anymore. "I want to know who complained about you bringing Jamal to work." Maya looked down at her shoes. "It doesn't matter, ma'am. The rules are the rules. I shouldn't have brought my son to a professional job. It was wrong of me. That's not what I asked." Mrs. Hart's eyes were sharp. "Who complained?" I think it was Mr. Henderson from the house next door. He saw Jamal in the garden one day and said," Maya's voice got very quiet. "He said, people like us don't belong in neighborhoods like this." Mrs. Hart's face turned red with anger. "People like you? People like you?" Her voice got louder and louder. "You are one of the hardest workers I have ever seen. My gardens have never looked better. And your son," she looked at Jamal, who was still crying, "your son has more kindness in his little finger than Henderson has in his whole body." Maya's mouth fell open. "Mrs. Hart, I'm not finished." Mrs. Hart walked to the fireplace and pulled a cord. A moment later, Roberts appeared. "Roberts, call my lawyer. Now, tell him I need papers drawn up immediately." "What kind of papers, ma'am?" "Employment papers. Maya Johnson is no longer the gardener. As of right now, she is the house manager of the Hart estate, with a salary triple what I was paying her before, and full benefits, and housing." The room went completely silent. Maya's legs got wobbly. She had to grab a chair to keep from falling. "Housing? But Mrs. Hart, we can't afford. There are 15 bedrooms in this house, Mrs. Hart said. 14 of them are empty. You and Jamal will move into the east wing. Immediately. Tomorrow if possible. But why? Maya whispered. Tears were running down her face now, too. Why would you do this for us? Mrs. Hart walked slowly to Jamal. She knelt down in front of him, which was hard because her knees were old and achy. She looked right into his eyes. Because 3 weeks ago I was dying, she said quietly. Not my body, but my heart. I was a ghost living in a mansion. I had forgotten what it felt like to laugh, to care, to hope. And then this stubborn little boy sat down next to me and refused to let me stay dead inside. She reached out and wiped the tears from Jamal's cheeks. You asked me once if I had any children. The answer is, I did. His name was Matthew. He would have been about 10 years older than you. He died when he was 7 years old. Jamal's eyes got big. That's so sad. Yes, it was the saddest thing that ever happened to me. After he died, I locked his bedroom door. I locked my heart, too. I told myself I would never love anyone again, because loving people means you can lose them, and losing them hurts too much. But, Jamal said softly, if you never love anyone, isn't that lonely? Mrs. Hart smiled. It was the first real smile she had smiled in 10 years. Yes, sweet boy, it's very lonely. And you know what? I'm tired of being lonely. She stood up slowly. Roberts rushed over to help her. She turned to Maya. Your son has given me a gift I thought I'd lost forever. He's reminded me that life is for living, not just surviving. The least I can do is make sure he and his mother are taken care of. Maya was crying so hard she could barely speak. I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet, Mrs. Hart said. Being house manager is real work. You'll have to manage Roberts, the cleaning staff, the gardeners, all the bills and schedules. Can you do it? Maya stood up straight and wiped her eyes. Yes, ma'am. I can do it. I promise I won't let you down. Good. Then it's settled. Mrs. Hart sat back down at the table. Now both of you sit down. Dinner is getting cold, and I've learned that food tastes better when you eat with family. Jamal's whole face lit up. Family? We're family now. Well, Mrs. Hart said, cutting her chicken, you eat at my table every night. You live under my roof. You've made me smile again. What else would we be? Jamal jumped up and hugged Mrs. Hart, so tight she gasped. I knew it. I knew you weren't mean. I told Mama you were just sad, and sad people need hugs. For a moment, Mrs. Hart didn't know what to do. Her arms hung at her sides. She hadn't hugged anyone since Matthew died. But then, slowly, she wrapped her arms around Jamal and hugged him back. And she started crying. Not sad tears this time. Happy tears. Maya hugged them both, and Robert smiled in the doorway, wiping his own eyes with his towel. If you're enjoying this story of unexpected family and second chances, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales that will touch your soul. Your support means everything to us. The next few weeks were like magic. Maya and Jamal moved into the East Wing. Jamal got his own bedroom, bigger than their whole old apartment. He couldn't believe it. He had a bed shaped like a race car, a toy chest that Mrs. Hart filled with games and books, and his own bathroom with a bathtub big enough to swim in. But his favorite thing was dinner time. Every single evening at 6:15, Jamal would run to the dining room, and Mrs. Hart would be there, waiting for him. Sometimes Maya joined them. Sometimes Robert sat down too. The long table wasn't so empty anymore. Mrs. Hart started smiling more, then laughing. One day, Jamal told a joke about a chicken crossing the road, and Mrs. Hart laughed so hard she snorted. They all stared at her in shock, and then they all started laughing. The mansion felt alive again. There was music playing. There were voices echoing in the halls. There was the sound of a little boy's light-up sneakers running up and down the stairs. One Saturday morning, Jamal knocked on Mrs. Hart's bedroom door. "Come in," she called. Jamal walked in slowly. He was holding something behind his back. I made you something, he said shyly. Oh, what is it? He held out a piece of paper. It was a drawing. There were 3 stick figures holding hands. One was tall with gray hair. One was medium-sized with a big smile. One was small with light-up shoes. Above the drawing, in messy kid handwriting, it said, "My family." Mrs. Hart's hand shook as she took the picture. Fresh tears filled her eyes. "This is beautiful, Jamal." "That's you." Jamal pointed to the tall stick figure. "And that's Mama. And that's me. We're holding hands because families stick together." Mrs. Hart pulled Jamal into a hug. "Yes, we do. Thank you for this gift. I'm going to frame it and put it on my bedroom wall." Really. That afternoon, Mrs. Hart did something she hadn't done in 10 years. She opened Matthew's bedroom door. Jamal stood next to her, holding her hand. "This was my son's room," she said quietly. "I haven't been in here much since he died. It hurt too much. Can I see?" Jamal asked. They walked in together. Jamal looked at the toy cars, the books, the baseball glove. He liked a lot of the same stuff I like. Yes, he did. "Mrs. Hart," Jamal said carefully, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." Do you think Matthew would be happy that I'm here? Or would he be mad that someone else is living in his house?" Mrs. Hart knelt down and looked into Jamal's worried eyes. "Oh, sweetheart, Matthew would love you. He always wanted a little brother. And I think," her voice cracked, "I think he would be happy that his mama isn't sad anymore." "Good," Jamal said, hugging her, "because I love you, Mrs. Hart." It was the first time anyone had said those words to her in 10 years. "I love you too, Jamal," she whispered back. "So very much." 2 months later, something wonderful happened. Mrs. Hart's lawyer came to the house with important papers. Mrs. Hart, Maya, and Jamal sat in the library. "Mrs. Hart has made some changes to her will," the lawyer explained, "and she wanted you both to know about them now, while she's healthy and alive." Maya looked nervous. "Changes?" Mrs. Hart smiled. "Maya, I'm leaving you this house when I die. It will be yours and Jamal's. You'll never have to worry about having a home again." Maya burst into tears. "Mrs. Hart, that's too much. I can't accept." "Yes, you can, and you will." Mrs. Hart's voice was firm, but kind. "You've given me back my life. This is the least I can do." Then she turned to Jamal. "And young man, I'm setting up a trust fund for your education. You can go to any college you want. You can study anything you dream of, and you never have to worry about money." Jamal threw his arms around her. "Thank you, Grandma Hart." Everyone froze. Jamal looked up, worried. "Is it okay if I call you Grandma? I never had a grandma before." Mrs. Hart's face crumpled. She hugged Jamal tight. "It's more than okay, sweetheart. It's perfect. Don't forget to smash that like button if the story touched your heart. And subscribe so you never miss our uplifting stories about love, family, and second chances. Comment below and tell us, what would you do if you met someone who needed a friend? Years passed. Mrs. Hart lived to be 92 years old. She got to see Jamal graduate high school with honors. She got to see him get accepted to college. She got to see Maya fall in love again with a kind man named David who treated her like a queen. And every single evening, until the very last day of her life, she ate dinner surrounded by family. The long table wasn't empty anymore. It was full of laughter and love and the sound of people who cared about each other. On her last day, Jamal sat beside her bed, holding her hand just like he had sat beside her at dinner all those years ago. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for sitting next to me that first night. Thank you for not giving up on a sad old woman. Thank you for letting me stay," Jamal whispered back, tears rolling down his face. "Thank you for becoming my grandma." She smiled one last time. "Best decision I ever made." And then, peacefully, Eleanor Hart closed her eyes. But she didn't die alone. She died surrounded by love, surrounded by family, surrounded by the sound of people who would miss her forever. At her funeral, Jamal stood up to speak. He was 18 years old now, tall and strong. but his voice still shook with emotion. "Grandma Hart taught me that family isn't just about blood," he said. "It's about showing up. It's about sitting beside someone even when they push you away. It's about loving people when they've forgotten how to love themselves." He held up that old drawing he had made when he was 7, the one with 3 stick figures holding hands. "She kept this picture on her bedroom wall for 11 years, he said, "because we were her family, and she was ours, and that's all that mattered." There wasn't a dry eye in the whole church. Today, Jamal is a doctor. He works with kids who have cancer, just like the cancer that took Matthew all those years ago. He lives in a Hart mansion with his mama Maya, his stepdad David, and his own little daughter. Her name is Eleanor. They call her Ellie. And every evening at 6:15, the family sits down for dinner at that long table. The table isn't empty anymore. It's full of love, laughter, and the legacy of a wealthy widow who learned that the richest thing in life isn't money. It's family. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late for second chances, and that love can heal even the deepest wounds. Drop a comment and tell us your thoughts. God bless you all, and remember, never eat alone when you can share a meal with family.